To Shadow Shorts. If we've never met before, my name is Jeff Echols. I am a senior advisor and the head of marketing for Shadow Partners. And every weekday, I bring to you a conversation with an expert or thought leader in the realm of innovation for the built environment. Today is no different, but today's, I think, is going to be a little bit different in the subject. But I think it's really, really integral and really important to this whole conversation of innovation in the built environment and how people are innovating. So I'm joined today by Nguyen. He is with Hensel Phelps. He is the director of innovation at Diverge, and we're gonna learn what the difference is between Hensel Phelps and Diverge, how those two are related and what they are. But I've been having a lot of conversations with Ty over the last several weeks about building and fostering a culture of innovation. And this is a conversation you're not going to want to miss, because this culture of innovation is something that every organization needs, in my opinion. So, Ty, welcome. I'm glad you're here, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate you having me on this, and looking forward to this conversation as well. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. As we've been talking, I know a lot about what you're working on and how you get your team members involved in what you're working on and in the whole process of innovation. But why don't we start with the relationship between Hensel Phelps and Diverge and your role as the director of innovation? How do these work together, and then how are you pushing things forward?
Sure, Jeff. And I think for us, we realized in the last decade or so, we have a very innovative culture. It's we coin them our everyday innovators, honestly. And for us, really, in the last handful of years, it's really trying to figure out how we put a focus on it, right? We want to make sure we create a foundation that will truly allow us to innovate. We are innovative, but it's more of reactionary innovation towards tools that we need or just solutions, and it's on the cadence of our projects and our deliverables. But more so today, it's really having that innovative thought process that pushes you into the 10, 15 year, 20-year mark, right? And really, that's truly what Diverge does today is, we are a Hensel Phelps company, and Hensel Phelps, again, 1937 origins in Colorado, and today 9 regions across the country, a very diverse portfolio. We are the largest aviation contractor, in the last handful of years as well. You've probably at some point flown through one of our job sites, but within that, I've been with Hensel Phelps 17 years, and the last 10 have been the director of VDC. And as VDC, it's always kind of, my charge was always to kind of get in front and provide solutions for our projects and our people. And so that transition wasn't hard, I think, to stand up Diverge. But again, with Diverge, it's more of a focus where we look at both internal and external partnerships, and I can definitely talk through some of that. But, I think both are very important for us. This last year, it's really been kind of internally facing and making sure we're building this foundation that will truly allow us to innovate. And I can talk through some of the initiatives that we have that's helping build this foundation as well.
Yeah. So I know one question that may come up, and you and I have talked about this because it actually came up in a conversation I was having with somebody else in the industry, another part of the industry. So you've got Diverge, which is a VC, and it's a Hensel Phelps company, as you just explained. And a question that somebody may have is, okay, Hensel Phelps, generations old construction management, a leader, as you said, in aviation and other types of construction. Why do you have a VC? Why are you vetting startups? Why are you looking at internal and external partners with an eye towards innovation? Why do you need that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And honestly, Jeff, part of it was, again, I feel that, we've had decades of historic data that shows that we've had early partnerships with the startups, right? And really helped grow them and really expose them to our people, our processes, our owners. And within that process, we really never had a strategy specific to the financial aspect of these startups and their potential, right? And so today, not only are we looking at through Diverge the lenses of, are these startups viable for what we need? Is it a solution that we can get behind? Is it scalable? Is it sustainable? I think on the Diverge and the VC side, we're able to look at the financials. Is this a good investment, right? Is this something that we can partner with early? Is this something ultimately at the end of the day, can it exit and give us the return that, we're hoping? But, I think that is on the radar. But again, I think this last year has been really kind of standing up the foundation. But the outlook with Diverge is yes. I think at some point it's a majority of our focus will be on investments and getting a return, right? Because it is an employee-owned company. It is. We don't have a fund. Really, it's really through the hard work of our people, and we want to make sure we're mindful and not only who we're partnering with, but who we're investing with as well.
Yeah. So when you look at these investments that you're talking about, the startups and others, is the purpose for all of these startups to come in and whether it's technology or robotics or whatever the different companies are, is the purpose to find and invest in startups and in companies that will help your workflow, that will help your output, or does it go broader than that?
It does. It touches on that, and it does go broader. I think for us, first and foremost, I think that on the internal focus, the reality is our people are very innovative. They're always challenging the status quo, right? Whether it's a process or it's a new tool that they need to help them on their day to day. And so, through Diverge, we want to make sure we're understanding all those things, right? If there's an initiative at one of our projects, one of our regions, we're making sure we support that. We're engaging with the startup or that solution provider, and then we're putting them through our process. And through the process, it makes it really concise, right? I think that the feedback is then very concise that goes back to these solution providers. And then within that, our people, right? They're starting to make sure that we have measurable values of what are our expectations, what are we looking to do through this pilot, what are we looking to do with this startup, and then does it fit an overall strategy, right? So it's not easy, but it's trying to connect all those dots. And so the internal piece for us in the partnering, it's our departments, it's our business units, our people, our projects, our owners, right? And then there's a faction of that is very external, where I think you touched on it, Jeff. It's the partnership with the startups, right? Making sure we mentor them well, we expose them to the right projects, to the right people, giving them the right feedback, not overburdening them with every feature that we want, knowing that it's got to be strategic in their roadmap as well. And I think with many solutions that come in house, we're always asking them to do XXX, right? And sometimes they're like, "Whoa, that's not in our wheel well," but being conscious of that, and that's where Diverge plays in that as well. And then what I've seen today that's changed a ton is really the partnerships with industry, and that's part of this external focus. It's not only with startups, it's with venture capital groups, right? Like the Shadow Ventures of the world. It's very symbiotic. Obviously, the investment is well needed, but within that, to grow these startups, we know that the GCs play a large role in that, in mentoring and growing these solutions. I partner with a lot of our competitors, right? Because I know the only way we can change and be effective is to partner with industry, and our competitors are industry. And a lot of times we're sharing notes today that more than we've ever have. Our trade partners are obviously very important in this process, because many of these solutions are kind of centered on them. And so again, this kind of internal and external kind of push has been something that we're really focusing on, and making a lot of headway this last year.
Well, I think that's really interesting. I mean, you bring the trade partners into the conversation, you bring competitors into the conversation, and I know that there are organizations out there that have maybe an innovation team, right? It's 3 people, it's 10 people, it's whatever, but that's not what you're talking about. You're talking about actually creating a culture, part of the DNA, I think, of your organization, where then that I assume that's probably part of what it takes to say, hey, yeah, we're going to include our competitors in these conversations, our suppliers, et cetera, in these conversations. So what does it take to build that culture? How do you take the leap to say, hey, we're getting everybody involved in this process?
I think for a long time, I think especially early in my role years ago, we felt that our tools were our IP, right? It's really, what tools do I have versus my competitors? Today, the realization is that, guess what? Everyone's got the same tools. And then we don't have all the resources and manpower to try everything and create white papers and really, scoring criteria. And so that's one of I think the gravitating things with the GCs partnering up, because we can divide and conquer. We can take these startups, and if it's, one of our competitors working on a robotic and we're working on the same one, sharing notes and growing that robotic group in a way that it's, not siloed and it's transparent. And I think with that type of outlook, I think there's more and more people wanting to be a part of that. And even our owners, there's a lot of progressive owners out there that really they want to challenge certain things, and whether it's process or technology, they love having that candid conversation with industry, and that includes GCs, trade partners, and then the VCs. Honestly, they've been great in terms of providing insight and outlook and potential. And so, like I said, a very symbiotic movement where I think all these different groups getting together and having these conversations and being transparent is very gravitating. I get to meet anyone that wouldn't want to be part of that type of conversation.
Yeah, and this is a little bit of inside baseball that I'm going to share for everybody, but I also know that Ty is always putting his team forward as well, right? We've got Ty, he's the director of innovation, and he's thinking about all of these things and working on all of these things. But almost every conversation that we have, Ty is looking for ways to get his team involved, even ahead of himself, and I really appreciate that. And from the outside, sort of the fly on the wall, I think that's a great demonstration of the autonomy that you have, or that you provide for your team, and that in my opinion, in my view, that has to spur that innovation, giving them the safety, I guess, to go out and make some decisions and try some things.
No, Jeff, thank you for that. I think within the Hensel Phelps culture, we empower our people, right? And it's no different with innovation. I feel that myself and my smaller team of three, we are not the ones that are going to provide every innovative idea out there, right? And so this last year, as part of the foundation building, we're standing up think tanks around the country, right? So 9 regions. Within these think tanks, there's going to be a regional leader, and then teams of SMEs that are passionate about challenging the status quo. And everyone's got a great idea. And what we realize, Chef, is you have to be inclusive. Everyone has an idea, and really our whole thing and what weighs on me is how we respond to these ideas, right? And so through these think tanks, as we stand them up regionally, their task is to go out, solicit ideas that are challenging us on a day-to-day. And then within that, we're going to partner as regions to figure out how we tackle these issues. And the thing is, I think with us, and it's just getting centered on innovation in general. I think so many people think innovation is just technology. In reality, it's not. It could be a simple concept or process, right? That you just tweak a few things. And, I think a lot of times you may need a solution, you may not. But, I think that's just the grounding, that making sure everyone understands that innovation just doesn't need to be technology. It can be just a great idea on process and efficiency. And then within that, again, the things that weighs is making sure that I respond in the right way, and listening and understanding these ideas and figuring out how we scale and make them sustainable. I think for us, that's really, behind the DNA, and something that we strive to push forward.
Yeah. That's as you say that, it reminds me of 2 different books. I bring these up every once in a while, but there's a book called "Where Do Good Ideas Come From? The Natural History of Innovation," I think is the subtitle. Stephen Johnson, I think, might be the author of that, off the top of my head. And you say that, and in the book, he describes what innovation is, and you're right. I mean, he goes all the way back to a time that we would probably think of as pre-technology, and talks about innovation. That's a really good read. And then Carla Johnson has a book. She's actually been on Shadow Shorts before, called Rethink. So RE:think, Rethink Innovation. She talks about building a culture of innovation. I don't know if you two know each other. She's based in Denver, but I think you'd have a great conversation, because what she focuses on and what she works on, I think, is exactly what you're doing at Hensel Phelps and Diverge. So
that would be a great conversation, because obviously you see under Diverge, it's rethinking innovation. So any insight, and I think that's us as well. We don't know everything. We're not the SMEs on everything. And that's really been a part of this journey this last year, is trying to get smarter on all fronts, right? And the biggest thing for us is our AIs are people. I mean, the collective, the experiences. I mean, that's, I think for me, it's so, I think, compelling, is really reaching out to our people, because many times they do have the answers, right? And just making sure we listen and react the way we need to.
Yeah, I love it. If you're listening to this or watching this right now and you say, "Oh, I'd love to hear more. I'd love to get deeper into this topic." Well, the good news is that Shadow Summit is coming up in October. It's our 7th annual Shadow Summit. And it'll be in Atlanta, October 24th to 26th. And Ty, and I think some of his team are going to be at and speaking at Shadow Summit this year. And the topic of a culture of innovation will certainly come up in those conversations. If you've never heard of Shadow Summit or attended before, it is a purposefully intimate affair. 200 tickets maximum because we can't put any more seats in that theater. And it's a highly curated, purposefully curated in terms of topics and also audience. So shadowsummit.com is where you can find more information, and the tickets are going pretty quickly. So you need to go there, go to the top of the page. There's an apply button so that you can apply to be on that list, and you'll get an email on how to purchase those tickets. So join us for that, meet Ty, get more into this conversation about a culture of innovation. And also, if you want to know more about Diverge and what's going on there, the URL's in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen right now, diverge.vc. You can see what's going on, what Ty and his team are working on, what they're building out there. Ty, first of all, thanks for this conversation. I'm looking forward to the panel and other discussions at Shadow Summit, because I think this is a really important topic. You know, it's bigger than technology. It's bigger than one person or a small team. It's just like in the title, it's got to be a culture.
Right. Thank you, Jeff, for having me on. Fantastic conversation, and looking forward to meeting a lot of you at the Shadow Summit. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to it. So again, go to diverge.vc for more information about what Ty's working on, and then go to shadowsummit.com for more info on Shadow Summit, October 24th to 26th. And I will be back tomorrow with another one of these Shadow Shorts, another expert or thought leader in the realm of innovation for the built environment. Until then, have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks,
Take
everybody.
care. Thank you.
All right, welcome back to Shadow Shorts. If we've never met before, my name is Jeff Echols. I am a senior advisor and the head of marketing for Shadow Partners. And every weekday, I bring to you a conversation with an expert or a thought leader in the realm of innovation for the built environment. Today is no different. Our guest today is very popular in our circles and is a past keynote speaker for Shadow Summit, a future keynote speaker for Shadow Summit. So I'm really excited about that. And let me introduce to you Dr. Sam Chandan. He is the founding director of the Chen Institute for Global Real Estate at NYU Stern. He's also a professor of economics at NYU. And Sam and I were talking about maybe getting into a conversation about the economics and what's driving the future of real estate investment in the United States and probably globally as well. So Sam, welcome. I'm glad you're here. Thanks for doing this.
Thrilled to be here, Jeff.
Absolutely. Glad that you're here. And, thinking about what we were talking about before we went live, you mentioned Office Space, not the movie, but the actual space as a driver of many things, not just where we're going to work, or not just the leases, so to speak, but when you're looking out there across the landscape and considering all the financial and economic impacts, what does Office Space say to you right now?
Sure, I think we face real challenges in the office sector. Mm-hmm. That's clear. And if we look back to beginning in March 2020, and for probably 9 to 12 months, after that, there was a realization that there would be this period of time where our use of office spaces and the extent to which we would engage in our urban cores in the United States and other parts of the world, and major global capitals, whether London, Shanghai, New York, Chicago, or Atlanta, that we were constrained. I think what folks did not fully appreciate in the early stages of the pandemic is that we would find new ways to work, or that we would become much more open to ways of working that were not new per se, but where our cultural and our workplace norms had precluded our being able to say, 2 days a week, I'm going to work remotely, whether that be at home or at a third location. And it's really been over the last, I'd say, 2 years that we've had to come to grips with the fact that the way in which we think about our relationship to our offices, the way we think about our relationship to our downtown cores, and more broadly, when we think about our individual relationships to the built environment and our community relationships to the built environment, we are in a state of very rapid evolution. Now, it's the case that our relationship to buildings, and to urban areas is always evolving and changing. What is different this time is that it is evolving and changing far more rapidly than anything that we will have seen in our lifetimes. And that is proving to be a very, very difficult adjustment process. In the office sector, it is playing out over time. And in part, this is because of changes in the level of transaction activity, valuations, the lease rollovers that in many cases are proving, dilutive to cash flow. And we're seeing sort of, a bifurcation in the office market clearly where, some older buildings that are, I'd say, competitively obsolete, either because of their location, their ceiling heights, the amenities, their proximity to public transportation, whichever it may be, they're competitively obsolete. People are going to think very carefully about what the next life might be for that building because it might not be as an office. Earlier, a lot of folks, immediately ran to this idea that, okay, all these obsolete office buildings, particularly if they're in the urban core, would make ideal apartment buildings. And we know that in many urban cores around the United States, we have a shortage of multifamily. I think, again, sort of as we've explored these issues and ideas more carefully, what we've come to understand is that only a small subset of these older office buildings is actually suitable for repurposing as multifamily. And we've got a lot of assets where, time will tell. And we're going to have to bring significant creativity to bear and financing to actually find that next life. On the other side of this, we have a subset of very competitive Class A buildings that are in just the right location, have just the right amenity profile, are just close enough to public transportation. That from a tenant's perspective, if you do want to engage actively, with your team, give them that right set of incentives to want to come back to the office, to feel like, okay, it's not just coming into work, but the location, the layouts, the spaces are such that I'm able to have very meaningful interactions with my coworkers, right? I see the benefit of being there because that process of idea generation or collaboration or mentorship or whatever it is, depending on my particular firm and role and our industry, those buildings that really lend themselves to the case for office, in many cases are doing quite well, and so there are differences there. The key issue for us when we think about sort of that that challenge or that headwind in the market that is underassessed is that, again, the challenges that we face in the built environment and our relationship to it are much bigger than office. They are about how we think about the role of the urban core in supporting local economies. They are, and again, it's not just the office spaces, all of the spaces that are complementary. Folks will point to retail right away, sort of that, in New York, certainly referred to as a bodega or a sandwich shop or a place where you might pick up a cup of coffee. Those locations and those spaces that serve the office tenant are clearly struggle in this environment. But I think what's also true is that we can look even more broadly at all of the public spaces and public amenities that support a vibrant downtown. And in New York, Chicago, Boston, cities that are heavily dependent upon a viable, well-functioning public transportation system. Part of the challenge that we face is in thinking about not only how do we present a stable and reliable set of public finances at the city level, but how is it that we ensure the continued viability and stability and affordability of our public transportation infrastructure? And in a place like New York, this is very real. If we are going to see public transit ridership that is 15, 20, 25% lower on average over the course of a week or over the course of a month or quarter, as compared to the levels of transit activity that we would have been able to clock before the pandemic. Longer term, that's simply not sustainable. But what we also know is that the value of New York City's agglomeration, our ability to function as a city, is substantially impaired, without a well-functioning public transportation system. So all of these things really lend themselves to a broader conversation about how it is that we position cities to be relevant and to be competitive, in this, whether we refer to it as a post-pandemic environment or simply sort of, this, radically changed environment that, was already beginning to experience some of these forces at work, independent of the pandemic itself.
Yeah, that's, I mean, it's paradoxical, isn't it? So as you're looking out, we're past the middle of 2023 now, obviously. So headed towards the end of 2023, 24, 25. As you're looking out into the future, where do you see the most, or maybe recommend the most emphasis on development, on investment, on thinking about, as you said, if there's a 25% lower ridership of the CTA in Chicago, or pick your transit system wherever you are,
Right.
it's not sustainable. So it's going to take some innovation. So as you look out in the future, where do you see investment? Where do you see innovation happening in order to survive these things that you're talking about?
Yeah, so it comes back to a broader definition of resilience. I think prior to the pandemic, we thought of resilience principally in terms of resilience to climate shocks, and certainly that is key and essential. And I know that the work that the Shadow team is doing sort of is plays an important role here in helping to facilitate some of the new technologies that will aid us in building resilience. To climate shocks that may be difficult to, from an actuarial perspective, to anticipate frequency and severity, but also sort of the broader trends that we're seeing impacting our cities. I think post pandemic we think of resilience more broadly. Certainly, it's about climate issues, and in New York City, sort of your rising sea levels, sort of the heat sink of the city. These are very real issues for us, and we've been reminded of that quite regularly this summer, as have other parts of the world. Air quality, being a key issue. The other dimensions of resilience, I'd suggest, include things like, to come back to sort of the previous part of our conversation, local public finance. We think about why it is that people locate in a place like Atlanta or New York or Chicago or Boston. As an economic agent, I'm fundamentally more productive by being located in this place. What we also know is that by being located in these places, in part because of the density and the good and the bad that comes from it, there's a higher cost. Where we face real challenges is that in some cases, those costs and benefits are a little bit out of balance right now. And so when cities are thinking creatively about how do we reimagine ourselves, how do we reposition ourselves, what are the kinds of investments we make, we can work to contain costs. And a big part of that is in many cities, including New York, getting smart about tax efficiency becomes critically important, because this is an area where whether we think of it as competing with other cities or simply doing the best that we can for our own residents, we are highly tax inefficient. But those raise the costs of being in these locations. We have to ensure that the benefits that accrue from that urban agglomeration are always clearly stronger than the cost. That it's expensive to be in New York, but it is absolutely worth it. So that becomes part of what needs to underpin the creative thinking about how it is that we invest on a more practical level. This means in many cases sort of doubling down on mixed use neighborhoods. If you are a purely office district, then you are probably the one that is struggling the most. If you are a mixed use neighborhood and are zoned accordingly, so we have some office, some residential, but it is a neighborhood or a submarket that is active and engaged and vibrant, around the clock. That becomes that becomes the neighborhood that I think will succeed, in this later environment. Because otherwise, as you can imagine, sort of if you're a purely residential neighborhood, you lack the amenitization. Of anything that folks want to do when they actually leave their homes. And if you're a purely office neighborhood, then 4 to 5 days a week, you might look like a ghost town. And that's, neither one of those scenarios is sustainable. I would say, two other things that I'd add here. One is that, and again, this is sort of something that has come sort of emerged more significantly in the public consciousness, following the pandemic, is that there is a significant public health aspect to this. And although sort of in the industry, or most of the folks that I work with know me best as sort of an economist and a finance person, I'm also sort of an epidemiologist focused on urban epi, and the way in which we think about and envision the built environment has extraordinary implications for individual and public health outcomes, whether it be chronic diseases or infectious diseases. We've just come off of a period of time where the relationship between certain aspects of density, and and public health outcomes, has been driven home for us. But when we also look across major cities around the world, what we'll also see is that differences in the way in which we create space, in which we create public spaces, more than the pandemic, have again these sort of very, very significant implications for what chronic disease outcomes look like for large populations. And as we get older as a country, are thinking about, well, how do we build? How do we create public spaces? What do residential neighborhoods and residential units look like? And what does that imply for the kinds of cancer-related, obesity-related cancers that we might observe, for cardiovascular disease, for diabetes rates? There is a very, very strong linkage here that I think in the real estate and urban world, we are only beginning to explore. So those are some of the issues that I think, certainly on the academic and policy side, we're thinking about very, very carefully right now in trying to help inform a conversation around how it is that we build much more resilient and relevant cities for the next generation.
Yeah. For anybody, I know our audience is generally very invested in the built environment, right? We've got C-suite leaders from architecture, engineering, construction, real estate, and technology and innovation officers, et cetera. But if you're tuning into this and you've never thought about the true impact of the built environment, what Sam just ran down, I think was an incredible example of, we started out talking about offices and office space, and we've gone all the way through and talked about the implications of all of these things, all the way related to obesity, cancer, et cetera. Built environment impacts everything. And that's part of the power, part of the reason that we need to have these conversations, part of the power of having these conversations. So if you're watching this and listening to this saying, hey, I want to know more, I want to get more out of this. We've only got 15 minutes for these shadow shorts. What I would recommend to you is that you go to shadowsummit.com. Let me put that up on the screen, bottom left-hand corner of your screen right now, shadowsummit.com. That's the URL for the landing page for our summit, 7th annual Shadow Summit, coming up in October, the 24th through 26th in Atlanta, Georgia. Dr. Sam Chandan will be one of our keynote speakers, and you will certainly get deeper into this conversation there in Atlanta. The whole design of the Shadow Summit is purposefully compact, purposefully intimate, a maximum of 200 seats in the auditorium there at the facility at Georgia Tech, on the campus of Georgia Tech in Atlanta. We're going to have conversations like this. We're going to talk about generative AI, about housing, about infrastructure, about skilled labor gaps, everything having to do with the built environment. And we're setting the tone for investment and innovation in the built environment in 2024. So go to shadowsummit.com and hit the apply button. It is a curated group of topics, a curated group of attendees. Hit the apply button, find out how to get tickets for Shadow Summit, and join us for more conversations and much deeper conversations than the one that Sam and I have just had over the past 15 minutes. Sam Chandan, founding director of the Chen Institute for Global Real Estate at NYU Stern. Thanks so much for joining me. Thanks for all of the insights that you just shared. And I'm looking forward to meeting you and talking to you in Atlanta later this year.
Likewise, I'll see you in Atlanta. Have a wonderful weekend.
Great. You too. Thanks, Sam. And thanks to everybody out there. I'll be back Monday with another Shadow Short. Again, another expert, a thought leader in the realm of innovation for the built environment. Have a